Welcome to the NFHS pregame show. I'm Jacob Fredericks. With me, I have Noah Gershon and Caden Covert. And today we're going to be previewing the Highland Hawks matchup against the Casteel Colts. So Noah, what are you looking for Casteel going into this game on the road in Gilbert, Arizona?
Well, Casteel's an offense-first team. Their defense only allowed less than 10 points in two games this season, and it's really just about outscoring the opponent.
Yeah, and in games that they've had some struggles, especially late in the season. They have one of the toughest regions in the state of Arizona: Hamilton, Chandler, Perry. Those are some of the most difficult teams to play in Arizona, and they've at least found to be able to get one win, the quadruple overtime win over Perry. One of the best games I think I've seen in a long time, probably since Hamilton's win over Bishop Gorman. But they've struggled in recent weeks. Lost 17-7 to Hamilton, lost 42-21 to Chandler, and lost 38-7 to Basha, who is in the open. So they haven't really been able to punch above their weight quite yet. They've really punched at their weight so far. So what do they need to do in this game to get themselves in the driver's seat?
Well, they are coming off a win against Corona del Sol, so I think the momentum is there for Casteel to get going. Highlands defense actually is ranked third in the state, so they have a tough defense coming in. Casteel has leaned run heavy all year, and I think Highland could stop them, but if Casteel really wanted to, Highland has struggled in the last few weeks in their run game, so they could really punch it up the gut.
Yeah, and the Colts rush is led by the senior running back Isaiah Linier. He played all 10 games. He had 150 carries for 828 total yards and 6 touchdowns. He averaged about 5.5 a carry with 82 a game. Senior running backs Cole Sorensen, and then the wide receiver, actually, Mason Lewis, round out the rush corps with 319 and 238 respectively.
Yeah, and Mason Lewis, unfortunately for the Casteel Colts, appeared to have been ejected from last week's game. And if that is the case, and if that was upheld, the Casteel Colts will be missing Mason Lewis for this game. A huge loss for the Casteel Colts.
Yeah, that's a massive loss, as he was Palmer's top target, quarterback Paul Palmer. He caught 20 passes this season for 435 yards. He was averaging an astonishing 21.8 per catch, and he brought home 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, huge loss for the Casteel Colts, and I think they're obviously going to be looking to exploit the run game. Highland last week against Desert Ridge was mostly good. Desert Ridge barely got a first down, but there was 2 plays. Highland made big mistakes on the angles they took, and it resulted in 2 80-yard touchdowns for Regin Bale for Desert Ridge. And so I spoke to Bo Tarver after last week's game, and I saw the DBs talking, and they were not happy about their performance. They knew they made some big mistakes in that game, that in games like this against good teams like Casteel could cost them. So they know that they have to be better a little bit, especially on that run game. I think they're finally starting to get there, though.
Yeah, Highlands defense is a very good squad. Casteel's run game, though, even better. And I think Casteel's run game could really be a huge threat. And if Desert Ridge's run game had a problem for us, I think Casteel's run game will at least have a bit of an issue. So I think Highlands defense needs to prepare in that way, led by Jacob Rudder, their defensive coordinator. I've seen him. He has been working all week to find different plays that they've been running. And I think they are ready for a matchup against Casteel.
Yeah, they're going to have to deal with Paul Palmer. He's actually thrown 20 touchdowns this year, a lot more than I've seen from a lot of quarterbacks in the state of Arizona. A lot of teams like to run the ball. It's clear that Casteel likes to run the ball, but when they get down in those red zone areas, they like to go with the play action. They like to get some of those other guys involved, especially Mason Lewis, Nathan McConnell. Those are the kind of guys they're looking to get involved consistently.
Yeah, Paul Palmer had a really good season this year. He completed 119 passes of his 175 thrown. He had a total of 1,475 yards in the 9 games he played, and he had a completion rate of 68%, which was better than the Highlands star quarterback, Kalen Fisher.
Yeah, and so let's move along to the Highland Hawks, especially on that offense, finally starting to get it going. They had some struggles middle of the season where the offense just wasn't clicking. Went on a 3-game losing skid to ALA Queen Creek, and Red Mountain. They struggled in their own region, a region in which they normally are dominant or in it till the last game of the season. So the Hawks finally started to get it going in the last few weeks. Kalen Fisher had probably had his best season so far, thrown for almost 2,000 yards and also thrown 20 touchdowns. He's had a good season, and he's not turned the ball over like he did last year.
Yeah, Kalen Fisher is also a dual threat quarterback. He can get outside the pocket, as shown even in the loss against Red Mountain. Kalen Fisher was able to get outside the pocket, even though our offensive line was injured a little bit, which is a big reason why we lost to Red Mountain anyways. Kalen Fisher was able to get out of the pocket, create space, find room for his receivers to make some throws and to make some catches by the receivers. And I think Kalen Fisher, with a better offensive line, with the offensive line back healthy, I think can really exploit his run game.
Yeah, Fisher did have a bit of an injury scare in week 4 in the blowout of Campo Verde, but he had his best statistical season yet. He completed 65% of his passes. He went 144 for 220. He threw 5 interceptions and had 2 fumbles. He threw just 60 yards short of 2,000 in the regular season. But he has gone into a dual threat this year. He's escaped the pocket on an average of twice a game, and he usually gets about 8 per rush he does.
Yeah, and the games that you didn't see Kalen Fisher use, like you can see in some moments he's a little bit hesitant. He is committed Division I to go play at Central Michigan University, so you know he wants to keep it healthy. So you can see in moments dealing with that knee injury that he is a little hesitant to get outside the pocket. But when he uses his legs, he is one of the more unstoppable quarterbacks in 6A football, other than probably Tate Reynolds, who we'll get to in a little bit here. But he also uses in the run game. Highland struggled. Highland football has been known for running the football for years to come. Since I've been in high school, since 2020, Highland has been known as a team who runs the football well. And really this year, until the last game, they really haven't, especially in that middle of the season. Missing Cash Allen has been a huge loss for them. Cruz Colmore has had moments here and there, but he's actually been more involved in the passing game. And so I think the Highland's going to get far in the playoffs. They're going to have to utilize the run game. Cash Allen is expected to be back in a limited role this week and for the playoffs. They're not going to be able to play him on all snaps, but they're going to try and use him a little bit to try and get just some of a spark from him.
Yeah, that's good news for Highland because Cash Allen, through the first 4 games, he had 421 yards on just 43 carries. He was averaging a gargantuan 10 per carry, and he was averaging 105 per game, bringing in 3 touchdowns. But unfortunately, with that injury, he has been sidelined all season. Cruz Colomore stepped up, though, in his place. He had 105 carries on the season for 527 yards. He averaged about 5 per carry and 52.7 a game, bringing home 6 touchdowns, and he also succeeded as a receiver, but definitely not the same production that we saw from Cash Allen.
Yeah, Cash Allen was actually leading all of the state in yards per carry with 9.8 yards per carry before he was injured, and I think he was on pace to be first team All-State for running back, and I think he would have gotten some big college offers if he had stayed healthy. A big loss for Highland, but at least he's back this week in a very limited role. But Cash Allen, when he was on the field, the offense looked so much more routine and more. Kalen Fisher could throw the deep ball like he has done all year, but hasn't really connected on that deep ball really all year. So what he has gone to actually was Hayden Doherty, the tight end. He's done very well this season, 31 catches, 395 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Definitely Kalen's go-to target.
Yeah, and Hayden Doherty is committed to NAU, and he has looked better and better as the season's gone along. Didn't really get in the end zone much last year, but you can see the talent. You can see it all year last year, and this year he's finally putting it on display. But as you talked about the deep ball, I think what really changed in Kalen Fisher's ability to get the deep ball completed is a speedy guy like Anthony Martin, moving him over from cornerback, who he was Highland's probably best cornerback on the field consistently, always breaking up passes, really never got beat for a touchdown except for that one against ALA Queen Creek, but they knew they needed a spark on offense after that ALA game in which they only scored 7 points, and so they moved him over to offense, and since then he has been a dominant force. We all saw the catch against Queen Creek, probably the catch of the year in Arizona football. So I think Anthony Martin, that was probably the Hawks' turning point on the offensive side, is having a speedy guy like Anthony Martin.
Yeah, don't forget that interception too. Like he can make some very spectacular plays. He's very fast. And he could fly. So if you want a deep route, Anthony Martin can give that to you. If you want a big catch in coverage, he will also give that to you. I think Anthony Martin is the X factor for Kalen Fisher this week.
Yeah, Martin's definitely an X factor, and he's surrounded by some other key receivers like Max Brown and Gavin Priest. They all combined for 807 yards and 10 touchdowns as Kalen Fisher's receiving core.
Yeah, and Gavin Priest had some very good games this year, again, especially against Williamsfield. In a game that they were down, Hawks found themselves down 9 in the fourth quarter, going into that fourth quarter of the game on their homecoming game. And Kalen Fisher, in that fourth quarter, decided, no, they're not losing that game. They threw it to Gavin Priest, I think 6 times in the fourth quarter, including a touchdown. So Gavin Priest has had probably his best year after dealing with some injuries these last couple of years, but glad to see him back on the field. and the Hawks' offense has been rolling.
Yeah, they have really been rolling, and I think that momentum is going to take them into Casteel. Casteel defensively has been a bit rocky this year, so if they can find some holes in coverage or in the run game, I think Highland can roll past Casteel if they are really willing to.
Yeah, and I think this game could also come down to one side of the ball that not a lot of people talk about in these pregame shows, which is special teams. The Hawks on special teams have been actually pretty good. Have had a few fake punts that have worked this year, and 3 blocked punts from Bo Tarwater in the first quarter of last week's game against Desert Ridge. Probably the only time I've ever seen that. I think in the first quarter of one person getting 3 blocked punts. So the Hawks special teams has really stepped up. They've had different kickoff. They show different looks on some kickoff returns. The only thing that they're hoping is that their field goal kicking is able to make it. They have missed a few big field goals this year. So if they're able to get the field goal kicking there, just like Arizona State, as we've seen in college football, you can get the field goal kicking there, you're going to be very successful here.
Yeah.
And so let's move along to our predictions for the 6A playoffs for this game, and just who are the favorites you're looking in for the Open and 6A playoffs?
I think the Highland-Casteel game could be close, but I do think that Highland does pull away with the win against Casteel. There are a little too many holes for me that I see in Casteel that I think Highland can get past. And in the Red Mountain Centennial game, I have Red Mountain, but Centennial is a very dark horse team to win that game.
Yeah, Centennial probably the best 3-6 team you've probably ever seen in football. They just had one of the gauntlet schedule of Arizona, and unfortunately had their transfers come in a little bit late. And so Highland did beat Centennial early in the season. They did lose to Red Mountain in a game which just a few things didn't go the way. I think if a few things went a different way, Highland could have come out on top of that game. But I think for this game, Highland is probably the clear favorite against the Casteel Colts. A rematch, if people forget, of the semifinals a couple years ago here, they played Casteel in those games, and Casteel wants some revenge here. But I think Highland comes out the favorite here. I think another dark horse team to look at is South Point Catholic on the other side of the bracket. A lot of guys that I've talked to from the Highland Hawks are a little bit worried. They're not scared, but they're a little bit worried about having to play a team like South Point Catholic, who's been probably underranked in Arizona.
Yeah, let's talk about that matchup. South Point Catholic and Williamsfield is going to be, I think, one of the best matchups in 6A. Williamsfield, I think, is also a very dark horse team. They have kept it close with very much with some of the open teams, actually. And I think Williamsfield could take it from South Point Catholic, but I think South Point Catholic could make it as a high seed into the finals.
No, so who's your favorites to win the Highland-Casteel game, or just a dark horse for 6A?
Well, you guys keep talking about how South Point Catholic could beat Williamsfield. I actually like Williamsfield against the Catholics there. I think Williamsfield has proven time and time again this year that they can weather the storm and create a very close matchup. And I think they're going to show it. They're going to come out strong and really set a lot of people who were thinking the other way crazy.
Yeah, Q Scalings really had a good game against the Highland Hawks here on Highland's homecoming. Hawks, that's where I think the Hawks struggles on that run defense really started. But I think they've gotten it done. So who do you got for Highland-Casteel?
I do think Highland's going to take it home. I think the big difference maker in this matchup is going to be that defense. Some great, incredible guys for Highland like Rhett Yetter, Cooper K-Mac, Grady Crandall have all created an incredibly stout defense that has punished any other teams. Grady Crandall, Spencer Heath, and then Anthony Martin and Bo Tarwater have all created a great air defense that always puts pressure on the quarterbacks and creates way too much time in the pocket, which is where Highland's D-line has really succeeded.
Yeah, Cooper came back at 3 sacks last week, one of his best games as a Hawk. So we'll be looking to see if that Hawks D-line can step up again. And so that wraps up our NFHS Network pregame show. We'll catch you guys after the game.